Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting, Wednesday the 16th of June. Welcome councillors to the committee meeting and staff. And we'll now call the meeting open at 9:02 a.m. We have requests for leave of absence from Councillor Potter, who's away due to illness, and we also have a request for leave of absence for Councillor Henshin, who is away due to commitments as a result of serious storm damage last night through his part of the world. So I'd now move that both those leave of absence requests be accepted. Do we have a second? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Those in favour, carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Now move on to item 3, recognition of the traditional owners. Thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to acknowledge country and the land where we meet this morning, the Waka Waka land, and acknowledge the elders, both past, present and emerging. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Confirmation of the minutes, declaration of interest. I'm doing it again, skipping ahead. Item 4, declaration of interest. Does anyone have anything they'd like to disclose? No, not at this stage. If you do think of anything throughout the agenda, please feel free to notify, and we'll process that accordingly. Okay, moving on then to item 5.1, minutes of the Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting held on the 19th of May 2021, and copies of the minutes can be found at page 6 in the agenda. And I'd hereby move that the minutes of the Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting held on 19 May 2021 be received. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any questions, concerns in relation to the contents of such? Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 6.1, the Corporate Services, People and Culture, Communications and Media, Finance and ICT Portfolio Report. The report is at page 19, and it's now my pleasure to deliver such. Okay, well, first of all, in relation to corporate services, I'm pleased to announce that the Customer Request Effectiveness Review project is now underway, having officially commenced this month. The objective of the project is to fully review, rethink and re-implement all business processes, system processes, data quality processes and reporting requirements in order to deliver a corporate consistent, responsive and accountable customer request process for our council. Our first step is to understand our business. So over the month of June, the project team is running discovery workshops with all areas of council to explore what the business needs in its effective management of customer requests. These discovery workshops are designed to ensure that there is a channel through which expectations, issues and frustrations with the current process can be aired and what is needed in the management of our requests moving forward. A detailed business needs analysis will then occur over July and August as we scope out the specifics of our business needs. On to people and culture. In terms of workplace health and management systems, recently People and Culture has assessed the need for an improved workplace health and safety management system and has commenced the process to seek offers for a software package to support the WHS function at Council. To meet our range of needs, there will be a number of requirements to be met, but most importantly, the software adopted must be cloud-based with access to enter data using mobile apps on both iOS and Android devices. The software will need to allow for offline reporting, while in areas of low or no connectivity, and automatically update when arriving back into a service area. Recently, Council engaged the expert services of DWF Risk to provide an up-to-date and refresher training in relation to due diligence of staff in accordance with workplace health and safety legislation. The training, attended by all staff who have direct reports, provided an update on obligations to both employees and the community, and as part of our Council's ongoing commitment to the safety of our workforce and our community. Communications and media. In May, the media and communications team were very busy. Indeed, they progressed the following: 40 media releases, 17 media inquiries, 85 Facebook posts, 17 LinkedIn and 20 Instagram posts, 1 e-news article, 5 printed advertisements and 28 graphic design documents. A list of all media release inquiries and stats for May is available as an attachment to this report. On to finance. At the end of May, Council had a net operating loss of $427,000. While we are currently 92% of the way through the financial year, recurrent revenue was sitting at 94% of the third quarter budget, and recurrent expenses were sitting at 89%. Operational grants came in at 64% for the end of May, with notification being received that the early payment for the Federal Assistance Grant, commonly known as FAGS, will be received shortly, which will equate to approximately $3.437 million. The early repayment is less than what was forecast, so Council will see a reduction of around $400,000, which will be seen in the fourth quarter budget review to be presented at the June Council meeting. Capital grants could also see a reduction in the fourth quarter review of approximately $700,000, which will be pushed into the next year's income, although the exact figure is still to be confirmed as part of the review. While the fourth quarter budget is in the final stages of being reviewed, it is still on track to be close to the original budget's net operating loss. Finance will provide a detailed summary of the fourth quarter review in the Council meeting reports towards the end of June. At the end of May, Council's cash and cash equivalents amounted to $45.594 million, which was an overall decrease of $404,000 for the month. Out of this balance, $21.418 million was restricted, and the remaining $24.176 million was classed as free cash. Approximately $38.5 million of Council's cash at the end of May was held by Queensland Treasury Corporation. Council's capital works program at the end of May saw $32.281 million of the $38.529 million budget being committed or spent. This equates to approximately 84% of the program being utilised in this financial year. Of the $32.281 million, around $23.742 million was actually spent, and the remaining $8.539 was committed. Council has a number of grants, including Works for Queensland, with an end date of June 21, which will need to be spent by the end of the financial year in order to release the full amount of grant funding. At the end of May, Council had expensed and committed $1.952 million of the $3.31 million Works for Queensland COVID-19 funding. As part of the fourth quarter review, managers have revised what projects will fall under the Works for Queensland COVID-19 funding and have put forward amendments to ensure that all of the $3.3 million from this funding will be fully utilised by the end of June. Council's borrowings at the end of May equated to $33.425 million, with $2.878 million considered current and the remaining $33.547 million as non-current. In a report sent to the last Standing Committee meeting, Finance had indicated that there was a further potential of approximately $2,000 in bad debts that may need to be written off this year. Finance will send an information report to the Council meeting on whether any of the debts that made up the $2,000 will be required to be written off due to no further recovery action being available. Council auditors were on site during the month, with preliminary testing beginning on various processes. June will be a busy month for Finance, with the finalisation of the draft 21-22 budget document, asset revaluation processing and preparation for the end-of-year system rollover. On to rates. Some interesting statistics for the month of May. The lowest outstanding rates balance as at 31 May since 2018. Second lowest since 2012. The lowest number of properties at 31 May with outstanding rates since 2012. The lowest outstanding rates percentage since 2012. Higher than normal volumes of rates financial hardship applications have been coming in due to the pending sale of land for rate arrears process. 10 applications will be presented to Council in June. The annual pension verification is currently underway, with 135 letters being recently sent out to pensioners whose records did not match with Centrelink records. They have been asked to present their pensioner concession cards at one of our council offices for verification. If they no longer reside here or they do not respond by the end of June, the pensioner concession will be removed from their rate notice. The 6-monthly reading of all water meters in the region is also underway, and I must congratulate the Finance and Rates team on a tremendous job, particularly in addressing the level of outstanding debtors in relation to rates. As indicated, in many cases the lowest in almost a decade. Well done, thank you very much. Procurement. Due to the closure of the public tendering platform, LG Tenderbox, Council has partnered with Ilion Tenderlink, who are the largest provider of e-procurement and tender notification services within Australia and New Zealand. Connecting buyers and suppliers, Tenderlink streamlines the procurement process with Council by providing an easy-to-use electronic system for organisations who wish to respond to Council tenders. Registered businesses will be notified by email when a new tender has been released that matches their selected category of interest. Registration is free, and Council encourages all local suppliers to register their business on Tenderlink to ensure they are provided all opportunities to submit offers for Council's publicly tendered procurement activities. To complement the change in public tendering, Council has also recalled for local business to register their details and supply capacity within Council's local marketplace register of suppliers within the Felix platform. The marketplace is for non-contracted, low-risk, ad hoc supplier arrangements for an extensive list of goods and services available on the Council website under Tenders and Supply. The local marketplace is in accordance with Council's recently adopted procurement policy, which focuses on engaging with local suppliers wherever possible. Council is currently inviting offers on the following: workplace health and safety management system software, sale of roads, grass, hay, and supply and delivery of various herbicides. Council has implemented standard purchase order terms and conditions, accompanied by changes to creditor payment terms, with a letter to all creditors sent late May, early June. Key outcomes are: payment terms will be 30 days from date of invoice, payment runs will occur fortnightly, building contracts will comply with QBCC under the BIF Act, small business and industry that require alternative payment terms are able to apply to Council for a change in payment terms to depart from the newly implemented payment terms and conditions. Right, well that's my report, and I'd now move that be accepted by the committee. Thank you. And do we have a seconder for such? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Committee, any questions in relation to the contents of the report? Comments? Everyone's comfortable with such? Okay, Councillor Duff.
Just through you, Mr Mayor, a question. With the 8.539 million that has not been, won't be completed in this financial year, I'm just wondering about it being rolled over into the next financial year and how that will affect our capital works moving forward when we look into the budget. Is that going to take up quite a significant amount of our time completing that 8.539 million that's committed?
Through you, Mr Mayor, there's a full breakdown later on in the report, Councillor, on our capital works and any unfinished works that you'll get the opportunity to discuss in detail. It's later on in the agenda, if that's all right with you.
Yep. Just one more. Thank you. Just one more. Councillor Hench and I were out at the Kilbanya Sale Yards yesterday, and we were talking to the two agents out there, and they just wondered why we don't utilise that. Like, we sell hay at the sale yards, and why we don't, instead of selling this hay out to the public, why we don't sell it through the sale yards. That was just a question. So I just thought be interested to know if we've considered that.
Oh, yeah, through you, Ms. Mayor. Yeah, so we don't, anyone who puts stock in do their own feed. We could offer that as a fee for service then, and then there would be a need for us to source hay. But yeah, just traditionally we haven't provided that service at the yards. So that's why we just haven't we haven't been in the market from a Coolangatta Hayards operational point to buy or source hay because whoever puts their cattle in there. I know other yards, they might have a restriction that you have to use the feed from the facility. You can't bring your own, but yeah, that's previously how we operated. Something we can look at going forward as an operational measure.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I think it's something we need to look at because apparently last time when there was a real shortage of hay, they were trying to source it from like hundreds of kilometres away when we had it locally out to sell. So it's just a practical thing we probably should look at. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr Mayor. Just in response to Councillor Duff's comments there, I've bought and sold cattle through there in dry times, all the rest of it, and Pete's 100% right. It is the individual's right to feed their own cattle and source their own feed. Yes, you could possibly do that, but they've got a system out there. People have their preferred suppliers to go to when they're buying and selling cattle and using those people. Yes, it's an option, but it is up to the individual person that buys and sells cattle there to make sure that they source their own feed. So, yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Jones. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Really great to hear those statistics around the rates collection, and certainly would like to acknowledge the work that goes into that. That's enormous. I just wondered further to that, is there an opportunity to understand how many properties in the South Burnett have actually changed hands in the last sort of 6 months? The reason I ask is because there's been a number of conversations around regional development across the community around everyone knows the struggles with housing and struggles with relocating to an area like ours, and we all know there's been plenty of conversations around how quickly houses are selling in the region, and just like to understand what that transaction has looked like for our region over the last 6 months. Is it possible to tell how many properties have actually changed hands? Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. I'll take that on notice, and Councillor, and very happy to provide those statistics for you. And I have alluded earlier on my reports there that on average the last 12 months our rates section has been doing on average 10 rate searches a day. So we've got one officer dedicated to rate searches. So we wouldn't know. The information we provide is about any rates owing, water readings and that, but we wouldn't. We would be able to provide you with statistics of how many rate searches, but the final end, like it's due to contracts, you know, like if someone don't get the money from the bank or whatever, we can't give you those statistics, but we can certainly give you our rates searches.
Thank you. I think it's just a great thing to keep an eye on. I know you've fed them through the meetings previously, and I know local residents enjoy that insight. I also know how those property transfers, I imagine, have helped us to reduce our rates debt as well. So it's been great to see that movement in the market actually come back and support council and what we're trying to achieve here as well in keeping the doors open. So thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, just thanks, Mr Mayor. Just to back up and support the comments there from the councillor, the comments or the conversations I've had, and I don't want this to sound bad in any way, shape or form, but the properties that have been selling now that were previously rental properties have been purchased by people that have the money to come in, purchase the house and lives there themselves. I don't think there's any coincidence that the rates may be coming down because of that reason. It certainly, I believe, could contribute to that, because the information I'm getting is that the people that are coming into the area are now buying the houses. Unfortunately, that's why we have no rentals left, is that the fact that they're buying it to live in themselves and able to afford what the expenses are.
And through you, Mr Mayor, this is where we're investigating and we've elevated through business systems to have any debts levied against the land, so that when through these sales that we recover that debt at the point of sale. So that will also help our debtors decrease as well.
Okay, if there's no further questions, We'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.2, assignment of councillor portfolio representation, can be found at 28. A little bit of background on this one before handing over to Mr. CEO is that at the April Standing Committee meeting, it was a resolution that council receives an update report on councillor portfolio representation for information and presents a further report to the June Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee meeting. The portfolios are focused at a strategic level of council policy. The portfolio system is intended so that ratepayers and residents can identify which councillor to approach according to a strategic issue at hand. With the adoption of the 21 to 26 corporate plan, council is reviewing its organisational structure in accordance with the strategic direction, and it is recommended that any changes to the portfolio structure be finalised in accordance with the organisational review. As such, the recommendation is that council, this committee at this stage, receives the update report on councillor portfolio representation for information and presents a further report to the September Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee. I'm happy to move such. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Froloff. I might ask Mr. CEO, perhaps if you want to add any commentary before we go to the floor. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Actually, no, you summarised it pretty much on the button. I just wanted to make sure that for Council's confidence, it's not been forgotten. It's actually being aligned to the discussions. There is some fair consideration going on to the org review, and as we've discussed previously, we'll have that down for the first quarter, so which is the new adjusted time frame with the budget and the corporate plan. And really, it just my thoughts on it is to change something now and then have to realign again in 3 months' time if there is a decision. Quite properly with organisational reviews, there's no final decisions made. It has to go through its process. So we'd be just preempting an outcome of a review that we haven't finished yet. So yeah, happy to bring it back in September and get it in line with the org review.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Any speakers, comments for or against this stage? Comfortable with that? September report comes back. Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Item 6.3, meeting dates for the ordinary meetings of council standing committees, general meetings and budget meeting can be found at 30. Thank you, Mr. CEO, and your team for providing a list of proposed dates that will take us from July through to December, the next 6-month period. And they include here the Infrastructure Standing Committee meeting on the first Wednesday, in most cases, the Community Standing Committee meeting on the second Wednesday, Exec Finance and Corporate Standing Committee on the third Wednesday, and then, of course, the general meeting of Council on the fourth Wednesday of each month. In addition to that, we do have the special budget meeting proposed for Wednesday, the 14th of July. And of course, all those dates are provided there for all to see. So I'll hereby move that the committee recommends to Council that Council adopt the dates, times and locations for ordinary meetings of Council standing committees, general meetings as follows. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Speakers for or against? Any concerns in relation to the dates? Mr. CEO, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, the only one you'll notice there's a couple of standing committees that are backed up on each other. We've, for the information that we know in advance, the LGAQ State Conference is impacting, and then the LGAQ Bush Convention or Bush Congress, Bush Councils Congress, I think they call it. But so yeah, we've made adjustments for those dates that we're aware that councils will. There would be enough councillors out that would not have quorum.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.4 is the LGAQ 125th Annual Conference. Motion request for such can be found at 33. Mr. CEO, would you be so kind as to lead us into that? Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. So the LGAQ State Conference is coming up at the end of the year. It will be quite a significant conference, as I think we spoke about when we signed representation to it, is that it will be Greg Hallam's last conference, so it will be a big one. They've just started, so we're getting all the information coming through now, certificates of service, call for resolutions. So we do have a little bit of time, so we've put this one up today. Would be very happy just to get topics or areas of interest for council, and then we can develop up the resolutions to bring back. Same as the Australian Local Government Association and previously for the councils have been before, a resolution that's submitted to the LGAQ State Conference has to be able to demonstrate it's been considered by the full council. So an individual councillor generally can't get a resolution up without a council resolution behind it. So yeah, so happy to take topics and then we can come back to the general and work them through for the agenda process.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Let's go to the floor in terms of any proposed topics. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've run this one past General Manager Meehan, so that we call on the state and federal government to review the road maintenance performance contracts with councils with a view to increasing the amounts provided to council. That we call that the Local Government Association call on the state and federal government to review the road maintenance performance contracts with councils with a view to increasing the amounts provided to council.
Thank you, Councillor. General Manager Meehan, would you mind just speaking to that briefly for the information of the committee? Thank you.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor. So it's our understanding across the local government the last, for the better part of a decade, they haven't seen substantial or any increases in some cases to road maintenance funding for state and federal networks. What we find is that we don't even receive CPI on the RMPC and haven't for quite some time. Obviously, our costs continue to rise, which means we actually are doing less maintenance over year on the state network. I believe the council is looking to ask the LGAQ to advocate that the RMPC values be reviewed and increased in line with current service expectations.
Thank you, General Manager. Any comments, questions, concerns in relation to that? Committee feeling comfortable with that, Mr CEO? Any comments from you? No? Okay. Any other additions? Councillor Jones?
Yeah, Mayor, I notice in the budget that the state government's only going to provide one more year of support for the waste, all that sort of stuff. I'd like to, I don't know what your wording on that, but I'd like to see the LGAQ take that up and try and continue that funding or get have some assistance. I'm sure we're not the only rural council in particular that across Queensland that's suffering through that.
Yeah, thanks very much, Councillor Jones. Councillor, you're thinking more of an ongoing commitment or a 3-year commitment, or what are your thoughts on that in terms of the proposed resolution?
In a perfect world, Mr Mayor, it'll be an ongoing thing, but as we all know, the state government would... they've already indicated that they've got one more year left, and they've always indicated that it would only be a short-term funding, but I guess 3 years is better than none, so I'm happy with either or, whatever the chamber seems to think would be a fair option to take up with advice from the CEO.
Yeah, thank you. We'll get Mr CEO perhaps just to get the wording right in relation to the resolution shortly, but any other comments, feedback, Councillor Shoemaker?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd certainly like to put something in around the regulatory approvals process for both state and federal government in terms of renewable energy projects. And a coordinated approach to ensure social and economic benefits are delivered in asset communities. Need to do a bit of work on that wording in asset communities, asset-based communities. However, we've had discussions. I'm very concerned certainly in my short term in council, we've seen a number of renewable energy projects walk in the door and sit us down. And for a local government like ours, who could be, a significant energy hub into the future when it comes to opportunities afforded by renewable energies and the reliability of our current coal-fired operations, I think there needs to be a trigger with state and federal government approval processes and funding that actually brings local communities like ours to the table. I'm really worried that everyone's keen for we all see the zero net emissions target. Everyone's very keen to buy in on renewable energy. And at the end of the day, there are many backdoor deals, I fear, are being done with local landholders for renewable energy projects. It's not necessarily clear how long that renewable energy provider will be in the area, who will actually own the infrastructure, and in terms of social benefit, it's really easy to throw out some numbers, and we've done this modelling, and this is the great benefits this project will bring to your area. But I don't think there's enough collaboration between local, state and federal governments to actually see renewable energy projects brought into a community like ours responsibly. So certainly got to do a bit of work around that, but I think there needs to be a trigger process in that regulatory approvals process between all levels of government that actually holds these renewable project proponents to account. So when they say they're going to be long-term members of our community, they actually are. And they're not using us as an opportunity to sell their renewable project and make some money on the market. And then, the poor person who's ended up buying into this with a long-term agreement and limited understanding, because the energy in itself is changing. We're in a flux of uncertainty, and certainly as that transition continues for Australia and across the world, there'll be a number of changes for us. So I think we've got to, being that energy has played an enormous part of our economy for a number of years now, since the 80s in fact, I think we have a responsibility to our community to certainly put that on the table and have some more meaningful conversations about the approvals process, so we don't end up in a position where we've got half-baked and half-broken down projects operating in our community and nobody to hold to account. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Councillor. We'll just get the wording right in relation to the waste levy one first, and then we'll come on to your recommendation.
Mayor, with these, if they're a little bit broad in this, because they'll come back to the general, we can refine, so long as we've got the intent correct of what you're saying.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. CEO. We get the broad intent confirmed here today, and then we'll look forward to some clearer resolution statements coming back to the general meeting. Hang on, Councillor Jones. You have to put your light on if you want to speak. Come back to you shortly. Any comments? Or do you want to comment?
Yeah, just a question through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO. Like, how many are we looking to achieve here today? We don't want to over-capitalise on, I guess. The other one that I would be, that Councillor Duff always raises, the roadside grazing permits and all that sort of stuff for the rural people. We continue to do that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Jones. We haven't got a resolution to that out of the state at this point in time, so I would have thought it would be prudent to continue to advocate for that. So if we put that one in, the roadside grazing permits, that's fine in terms of the wording there, Linnell. We're happy with that. We've got those 4 broad statements of intent at this point in time. If there's no others, we'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Oh, sorry, we need a mover and a seconder. Yep, well, we've got... Can we have one mover for that, for the 4? Thank you, Councillor Duff. A seconder, thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Duff and Councillor Jones. And let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay, 6.5. We're right with that, Linnell. Thank you for that. Okay, we're back. We've got the technology working. Good. Okay, 6.5. Adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Recognition of Service Policy, Strategic 012, found at 35. and we can see that there. And thank you again to our senior executive staff and our manager of corporate services for providing such. The recommendation is that the committee recommends to council that the South Bennett Regional Council Recognition of Service Policy Strategic 012 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Second, thank you, Councillor Froloff. Okay, before we call for speakers, might hand over to you, General Manager, to provide us with an overview of the policy and the intent. Thank you. Or Manager Corporate Services, please feel free to
Through
speak. Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor. This actually is the CEO is the owner of this policy, but I'm happy to let the manager speak to that as an induction. I'll just seek direction there.
Mr. Sir, you happy for Carolyn? Yep.
I'm very happy, Mr. Mayor, either way. So
Okay, off you go, Carolyn. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. In terms of the governance process undertaking, there was consultation regarding the Manager of People and Culture, who is the responsible officer under the Office of the CEO for the delivery of this function within Council. Recognition of service policy is a passionate undertaking of the CEO and is certainly over the years of the service to the Council important to recognise the staff's contribution for the deliverables that we do on a day-to-day basis, and throughout that process the staff actually achieve our operational plan and then feed that into the corporate plan. So it was a general review of what we currently provide, just tidying up a little bit about probably more the main change is in terms of just the nuances around invitations, declining invitations, and what process we'll undertake should that be an occurrence. And in relation to, I guess we've had some challenges over the past 12 months with the COVID pandemic, and just making sure that we continue to recognise our staff in a certain way. And certainly that's been guided by the CEO and the Manager of People and Culture.
Thank you, Manager Carolyn. Of course, it would be remiss of me not to certainly thank and recognise our CEO, Mr. CEO, since you've joined our organisation. I understand you've put a lot of emphasis on recognition of service, and it's been a wonderful initiative, very important initiative, in fact. Having said that, Mr. CEO, would you like to perhaps speak to item 3.1 and how we recognise the service of our employees? Thank you.
thanks, Mayor. So the policy was we got it in 2019. So this is its first tidy up, and we've, as with all things, learn as you go along. We do have the odd staff member that doesn't want a fuss made of them for a range of reasons, and so they get a little bit shy. So manager's point about if they don't want to come to a function or a meeting, what do we do? COVID certainly threw it out. The first year we had a larger function and the first 2 years were involved very heavily with catching up because we had a lot of staff with odd years of service, like 23 years or 13 years or 15 years, and so we've caught up now. So the ones that come through each year now are actually in the year that they hit their milestone. We've got the next function will be in August. It'll be on the same format we used last year because of COVID again, so we're keeping away a little bit from the larger numbers just this year to be safe. Certainly what we've seen with the lockdowns down in Melbourne and then the people coming through the interstate, and so have you been to Caloundra is one of the standard questions you're getting at the moment. So we just thought with this year we'll keep it as a COVID safe event, but certainly that'll be in August, and the invitations haven't gone out. They will be going out very shortly to councillors in regard to that. The 10-year certificates, we do them through morning teas, barbecues, depot meetings, and then each month is the staff meetings, first year anniversaries and 5-year anniversaries. We've got a massive body of staff that have got years and years of experience, and it is one of those programs that very appreciative of council's support for it, that we can recognise, and I think for anyone who's been to any of those events, particularly that first one when we got them all back, and it was a little bit of a surprise that we wanted to recognise them. And it was funny because like a lot of the times, well, not funny, bad language, but you get the certificate really, okay, yeah, if I get the certificate, oh, well, what's the big deal? But you walk around the organisation now and those certificates are on desks and different places. There a lot of pride in those certificates, and there should be, because there's a lot of people who have done a lot of service. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. CEO, and again, thank you to you. One of the hallmarks of success, of course, of any organisation, be it in the public or private sector, is the extent to which the organisation can retain its valuable employees. And I think that's something that this organisation has done successfully. And of course, that doesn't happen through pay and conditions alone. It happens through job satisfaction, giving people the opportunity to feel as though they're making a real difference and contribution through the work that they do. So thank you, Mr. CEO, for formalising the recognition of such, and to you, Manager Carolyn. And it's great to see here, that after 10 years service, one would receive a certificate and pin, 20, 30 and 40 years, in addition to that, a service medal, and after 50 years, a service certificate, a pin and an engraved plaque. And that, I think, in addition, for 1 and 5 years service, an acknowledgement of the services made by the CEO at a relevant staff meeting. And of course, for 10 years or greater, then there would be presented to the employee at an appropriate council gathering, and awards presented at any time during the year. And of course, for 20 years or greater, an awards night as such to recognise the employee. This is a great policy, isn't it? It's absolutely tremendous, an important part of continuing to build that strong culture of employee commitment and through appreciation. Okay, so that being the case, we've got a mover and a seconder, Linnell, it seems. So any comments from the floor in relation to the policy? If not, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.6 is adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Learning and Development Policy. Strategic 013 can be found at 40. And just a bit of a summary there. The Council is committed to learning and development of its employees in relation to training, educational assistance and professional development. This policy applies to all Council employees unless otherwise stated, and is intended to clearly formulate the rights and responsibilities of Council and its employees regarding access to training, educational assistance and professional development. And of course, therefore the recommendation is that the committee recommends to Council the South Burnett Regional Council Learning and Development Policy Strategic 013 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Froloff. A seconder? Thank you, Councillor Shoemaker. Mr. CEO, would you like to speak to this one briefly, and then we can go to the floor? Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. This one has just been sitting. It was one of the aged ones that really needed a little bit of a refresh. It's I'd say fundamentally a policy statement. Over the last couple of years, we've really tried to reinvigorate, probably not the best word, but has certainly put a much more emphasis on the training and bringing people through. So the trainee programs are not only just the trainee programs, but making sure that we invest in our staff and in our organisation. So yeah, it's an area that again very strong on, and that we're continuing to do and looking for opportunities all the time to develop within our own organisation and bring people through, so they've got not only job satisfaction, but they've got a career path.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. And again, on behalf of our council, thank you and your senior executive team for the commitment that you show to the development, the professional development, alongside the personal support to our staff. Contemporary successful organisations, of course, always have a strong element of care for their employees, and an important part of that is giving them the opportunity to develop their skills in a broad way. In addition to doing that, of course, the benefits for us is that we will then see over time better outcomes and increased productivity. A tremendous policy initiative, and thank you again for your work in supporting such. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I absolutely agree. The learning and growth of staff is a priority, and particularly when I look at some of the demographics, and I know the CEO has talked about our ageing staff and the importance of younger people learning those skills so they can step up, and we have that strong pipeline of talent that's continuing council's work in the community. I think it's really important. I just had a couple of questions in relation to this policy because it is quite broad. I just wondered, in terms of identifying training needs, what is the current process around annual performance reviews and then mapping out a training plan and program for each individual employee based on their goals of being employed here at council? It's a question for you, Mr. CEO.
Okay, happy to, well, always happy to answer. The EDRs, employee development reviews, is funny what's in a name. They're not so much called, we try not to call them performance reviews now because people get very nervous. The fact that everything will be that's gone wrong for 12 months will be saved up and they'll be whacked in the day. And so, yeah, what's in a name? The employee development reviews are conducted annually, and I don't know if it's the Marines or not, but no man's left behind. Everyone gets one. So as council know, I do mine with councils, down to the ad hoc casual that does 3 hours a year with us, they get a review. Now, it doesn't fall contractors, different bucket. So out of that, it was that process was a bit like the policy was probably a bit dated and a bit sporadic, going back prior to 2018. I won't say it didn't happen, but looking at the general managers that were here in Carolyn, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was very ad hoc. How's that? So over the last 3 years, and in developing one of those processes, and it probably sounds a little bit of a round way, but in developing one of those processes, it's not only do we need to work with the people that are having a review, but the people conducting the review to get value out of them. So as each year it gets better, is it perfect? Not by a long shot, and still want a lot to do in this space. But every member of the organisation gets one. Going back to 2019, we put on a learning development officer, and all the training was coordinated back into one spot, because the other part that I found with the EDRs is that you had, as part of being ad hoc, different sections and different attitudes to training within the organisation. There was, and it comes with my position, because if my position isn't interested in training or shows that lack of concern about training the organisation, that flows out. So we've made sure that the management team has also, the training is a focus. I've held on to that training budget with grim death. Not that it's increased, but we're actually getting, I think, really good value out of it because we're utilising it. Still, as I said, way more to do, but identifying training gaps, opportunities. So through the EDR process, training is discussed as what your future needs, where you want to go. Is the PD still relevant? A whole raft of those points all come together through the EDR process. And then there's also a training matrix. So the training development officers, we're doing all the compliance training rigours. I've probably got my language wrong. Confined spaces. So some of the priority is it going to hurt someone, and will we go to jail for it? Absolutely. So it's compliance, it's and statutory. So that's top priority. Then the are we not necessarily going to hurt someone, but is it going to be statutory? Yes. Okay. That's absolute. So any of those sort of requirements, all the way down to, boy, that'd be really good to do. The one gap that I've still got that I'm not satisfied in my own mind is making sure that when we flow through, is that sections, some staff are more upfront with understanding their needs, and anyone who's a professional person and needs development points each year, engineers, planners, all those sorts of guys, myself, we've got a good understanding of what we need to keep our skills fresh. But some of the entry-level staff and newer staff may not understand the opportunities that are presented to them. I want to be able to be confident in my own mind I can stand here and say that absolutely everyone who wanted a crack at it has got a turn. So I think I've still got work to do in that space, but where we were 3 years ago, we're head and shoulders above.
Yeah, just a couple of other questions, just in relation to those EDR reviews. Thank you. I certainly think it's important to have that culture of constant learning and growing in a role. Everyone has one conversation, but then is there a process where there are like quarterly check-ins or alike around how you're progressing towards those key performance indicators that have been identified in your annual review?
Yeah, formally not so much. Informally encouraging it, and of a very like mind. There should be, to my mind, when the system is fully functional, there should be at least a minimum of 2. So the 6 monthly, how you going? It's not the formal EDR, but it's basically based around the EDR process. Given where I was 3 years ago, or given where we were 3 years ago, I've sort of satisfied myself with making sure that we can get one good one each year.
Yep.
Different managers will take a different tact as well. That will be, again, it's inconsistent is probably the word I'm looking for. Certain managers and certain coordinators absolutely are doing, and it's more than like it's nearly a monthly type. What are you going? You see the team meetings, and again, I'm happy to be. I'm very happy to be corrected, but my understanding of it was the team meetings. You've seen now people are using the term team meetings, and there's a couple of little things when we do the organisational review. It's like good old CEOs. They come in generally and they want to change the timesheet to make a difference, but management team. What's the difference between a management team and a leadership team? And so I haven't even shared this with the colleagues yet, but come the org review, I've been holding on to my opportunity that SMT will become SLT. And what's in a name, but it's really, to me, it's really, really important. And I think this now, new corporate plan, the opportunity to realign within the organisation, there's a couple of these that really could be updated, and then that sets the tone of where we're going to go into the future.
Absolutely. And I fully agree with that. And my last question was just, I understand there are professional memberships and certainly statutory training and requirements. But as a senior leadership team, and certainly informing the culture of council, is there a mechanism, or do we need to put something in this policy that ensures there's some values-based behavioural attitude, cultural kind of training? Like I've been in part involved in, Stephen Covey training courses before around highly effective habits of 7 effective habits of highly effective people. Gotten that wrong, but just in terms of actually rolling out like a blanket approach to these are council's values, and this is the framework and system that we're all working under or within. Is there anything in that sense that the senior leadership team actually informs?
Again, twins. The policy probably not so much at the moment. Happy with as it is meant to, keeping it broad, but as the procedure. So pot of gold. I've actually been again doing one over the last 5 months now that has been very values based and almost personal development rather than professional development. It's been excellent. It really has been excellent. I've yet to do my feedback form because I'm not quite finished, but it was each week over a period of time. It's been that values based and that cultural based training. Been talking with the manager of people and culture about I want to roll out bullying and harassment training. Not that it's a specific issue as such, but preemptive. The due diligence work that we did the other day with workplace health and safety. Absolutely, probably not so much in the policy, but we're reviewing code of conduct. We're reviewing, I'll call it the HR manual, but it's got a different name nowadays, but my old HR book. And so, yeah, absolutely in the same space, but probably use a different mechanism to roll it.
Yeah, that's fine. I just think that's really important for council moving forward, and a lot of high-performing organisations are doing that. It's more about personal development, the reflection on your own personality profile, your strengths and weaknesses, and certainly the team's understanding of each other's strengths and weaknesses can go a long way in building a really cohesive, collaborative team and a strong organisational culture. So I look forward to that work continuing. For the time being, I'm okay with the policy, but I do think I would like to see us take take a more holistic approach to professional and personal development rather than just the consistent statutory and compliance. And I'd like to see council have some sort of policy or document that informs that we really are trying to create a culture from the top down that's really about values, our values, and also the recognition that every person in the organisation, regardless of whether they are, in my opinion, a senior leader or our very valued street sweeper, is a leader. And the expectation is for them to operate from their values and certainly serve their community. So I look forward to more work in this space. I'm comfortable with it as it is, but I do think there's a much more to come back with this. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, well, yeah, certainly, Mr. CEO, thank you. It is a work in progress, and these things are best done carefully and in a very considered manner, because they certainly have a major impact on the culture and ultimately the performance of the organisation. In fact, there is an 8th habit of highly effective people, and it does talk indeed, Councillor Shoemaker, about by Stephen Covey, and it does talk much about the holistic view of the counts of the employee, as you've acknowledged, and providing employees with the opportunity, general managers, of course, to be creative in their thinking and to find solutions for themselves. And that is shown in the corporate world to be very successful in terms of improving productivity alongside job satisfaction. And I'm sure with the work that you're doing, that we'll see ourselves get to a point in time where that's incorporated into our policy. Because you and I have had that discussion, and you're very much on the same page. So thank you again for your leadership there, Mr. CEO. Okay, well, unless there's any further comments, we'll go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. And again, thank you to the staff involved in the development of that policy. Look forward to that coming to the general meeting. We now move on to 6.7 at 46, which is the public interest disclosure policy. Recommendation is that the committee recommends to council that the South Burnett Regional Council Public Interest Disclosure Policy Statutory 046 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Froelich. Second, I think you, Councillor Duff over there. Look, we'll call on you, Manager Carolyn, shortly to give us an overview of this, but just for the benefit of those perhaps viewing and for the committee. So a public interest disclosure is a report of a suspected wrongdoing or danger. This is in the general information section of the policy. For a report to be considered as a PID and attract the protections under the Act, it must be an appropriate disclosure about public interest information made to a proper authority. The principle of natural justice, procedural fairness, as such, will apply to all investigations the subject of PIDs. The rights of any person who is subject to or in some way associated with the PID will be safeguarded. Council is committed to affording support and protection from reprisals to any person making a PID, and appropriately dealing with the council representatives should they take reprisal action. Managers and supervisors are to ensure council representatives are aware of their responsibilities in making a PID and are able to advise other persons of the appropriate reporting processes. The PID standard obliges councils to maintain PIDs in a certain way and furnish certain information to the Ombudsman. Council will comply with any published reporting requirements, and any person, including a council employee, can make a public interest disclosure about danger to the health or safety of a person with a disability, danger to the environment caused by commission of an offence or contravention of a condition in certain environmental legislation, or reprisal after making a public interest disclosure. A council employee has a responsibility to and can also make a public interest disclosure about corrupt conduct, maladministration that adversely affects someone's interest in a substantial and specific way, a substantial misuse of public resources, a substantial and specific danger to public health or safety, or a substantial and specific danger to the environment. Council encourages disclosures of any reportable conduct. So that's to put the policy into context. Clearly an important initiative in terms of some of the things that we're seeing happening around the country at different levels of government in recent times. And I particularly draw reference to some of the issues that are happening in relation to harassment in the workplace of different forms. And I was hoping to see that our council will certainly continue to be a model council. And I know our CEO is very passionate about ensuring that we have a workplace in which all employees can feel safe and comfortable to do their job without fear of harassment or indeed any form of reprisal for disclosing a PID. Having provided that introduction now, I'd like to hand over to you, Manager Carolan, to add anything that you'd like for the information of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. In relation to this policy, it was a 2-year cyclic review. We took the opportunity to align the public interest disclosure function within council, where disclosures by an employee are managed directly by the People and Culture branch. Generally, People and Culture through HR or Workplace Health and Safety receive complaints or information from employees that could constitute a PID. And so they're best placed to receive that information and then make that determination and then appropriately manage. We, from Corporate Services, assist People and Culture in the management of a PID and the reporting mechanism to the Queensland Ombudsman. And in relation to this policy, the policy ownership in this review has shifted to People and Culture, predominantly where Corporate Services now we manage the PIDs from the public or in relation to the category where anyone can make a public interest disclosure, and the employee-specific PIDs are received by and managed appropriately by People and Culture, where we assist them in that process. In the procedure, there's an extensive process that we must follow, providing support to the disclosure as well as the person that might be subject to that disclosure, and providing procedural preparedness and etc. And making sure that we adhere to the mechanisms that our complaints policy also provides for that. It is a organisational approach to the management of a PID, and through the direction of the CEO, who is predominantly responsible for that process. As managers, we assist the CEO in delivering his responsibilities.
Yes, thank you, Manager. And of course, this is a regulated process which goes to the Ombudsman as such in relation to these prescribed PIDs. Just one question, I did touch on it in my introductory comments, in relation to workplace bullying, workplace harassment, even potential forms of sexual harassment. Do we have, in addition to this, policies in relation to how P&C manage that to ensure that we have all of our staff in a safe and comfortable working environment?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, we do. We have an extensive range of policies that cover off on equal opportunity, our complaints management process, internal complaints by employees that are separate to the PID process. The PID process only is triggered as a result of these type of complaints. However, through the CEO has made it very clear to management and across the organisation that no form of reprisal would be tolerated, and all disclosures are encouraged. So we have a number of platforms which staff can disclose information which may not be categorised as a complaint, but purely for information can assist us in being a better organisation and addressing some anomalies. We even have introduced an anomaly of process register, where we may not follow a process for a particular reason, rather than it being a judgmental approach. It's more of please identify, like a near miss from Workplace Health and Safety. So there's so many platforms within the organisation that employees should have access to be able to not only talk to their supervisor and have a frank and fearless conversation, but also through to senior management. And the CEO has, my view is the CEO has always made it very clear that his door is open to any employee within the organisation should they wish to have a discussion about a concern that they might have.
Thank you, Manager. It's comforting to hear that there's a multifaceted approach, many layers of reporting opportunities for those who are feeling uncomfortable for whatever reason in our workplace. And I do know that the CEO's door is always open to any staff member who is feeling that way. So thank you, Mr. CEO, for that leadership again in providing that safe and a healthy workplace for our valued staff. It's great to see that we are a model organisation at a time when this is very topical in the community, in leading the way. Okay, anyone else wish to comment before we go to the vote? If not, those in favour? Carried unanimously. Again, thank you all, and thank you, Mr. CEO, and your staff for bringing such forward. 6.8 at 54 is the adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council leave without pay policy. It's statutory 034. As I said, that's at page 54. And Mr. CEO, I might just get you to provide some commentary on this one, if you can, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Again, you'll note the age of this one. It was brought back for a shakedown and a refresh. We have a hierarchy of leave within the organisation. You do have sometimes people, so there's two aspects to leave without pay. Staff members have literally run out of leave. They've utilised every aspect of leave that they have available to them. Or you have those who may want to take a mid-career sabbatical and travel or study or do a range of things. So there are a different range of opportunities. The policy just gives a framework for the whole of organisation as far as how it's approached and dealt with. So there wasn't a significant amount of feedback got on it. It chugs along the process, the mechanical process that sits behind the policy works quite well at the moment, and really probably happier to take questions rather than labour on too long.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Policies there. The recommendation is that the committee recommends to Council that the South Burnett Regional Council leave without pay policy statutory 034 be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Froloff. Seconder, Councillor Jones. Questions? Comments? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, I just wanted to, I understand, certainly firsthand, understand the importance of parental leave, and particularly for not just the mother of the child, but equally for the father. And certainly my husband, having a small business, worked the very next day, which I know was very hard. So I just, I know there's quite a lot in here around maternity and paternity leave, and I just wanted a bit of an update in terms of, where we sit from an industry standard, and if there's any further work that needs to be done in this area, or we're currently comfortable with where we are. We can just
Certainly.
have a conversation.
Yeah, no, certainly happy to. It's picked up a fair bit through the EBA processes as well. So we align very closely to the awards and through that now industrial instruments. We're a little bit different to fair. This is where we start to drift off because we're not Fair Work. We sit under, yay, lucky us, the state system. With the public service. So Queensland, so the only two left in the state jurisdiction is councils and the state public service. That's a whole different debate whether we should be there or just unified under Fair Work. But anyway, it is that's where we're at. We have access to so leave without pay for the parental partner is pretty much guided by the Industrial Act and the industrial instruments. Happy to go into it. Our policies align to all those. We staff particularly can access the Commonwealth and maternity leave, but staff can access the Commonwealth system as well. So we also have our own paid maternity leave as well as they can access the Commonwealth scheme. So it's actually happy probably to get you some information on what is available, but yeah, we've just pretty much aligned to the current systems.
And just in regards to that, thank you. I just wondered, in terms of benchmarking us with what other councils or local governments are doing in this area, has this been a conversation in any of the many conferences or conversations and tables that you might be at, CEO Mark? Like, do you think our current commitment under our EBA and our current process needs review, or are you quite comfortable with where we are currently in the?
Good. Yeah, great question. Thank you. The renewal of the EBA last year, because it was quite aged, and certainly acknowledge again General Manager O'May as on that committee, brought us up. It's probably actually, it's not covered in the policy, but one of the things that we identified here with the leave without pay, and specifically in this area, was the nervousness of returning staff. It took me a bit. I hadn't hit that before but the nervousness of some of the returning staff that their position would be still there. And so we've been solidifying that end of it as well, so that people have got way more confidence, I trust and hope still, that council will honour all of its not only honour, but will look to go above its obligations in this space. These policies with the domestic violence, and these policies have a very strong and passionate belief in, and they have to, and they have to be done properly. The benchmarking, again, I think we sit pretty much comfortably. It certainly comes up in conversations. Formally, I'm just trying to think if I've seen a formal benchmarking, but certainly at my level and senior management level, it is a conversation that does. The EB process last year pretty much brought us up to current modern standards, if I can use that terminology.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. No further questions at this point in time. I definitely think this is an area we need to keep an eye and a focus on, particularly from a cultural point of view going forward. And I certainly think it's always a good idea to check in and see how we're tracking with industry. So I appreciate you're at many tables, Mr. CEO, and having those conversations regularly. So thank you for the work you do in that space. And yeah, I'm comfortable with the policy at this point in time.
Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 6.9, adoption of the South Burnett Regional Council Water Restrictions Policy. Strategic 015 can be found at 63. Recommendation is that the committee recommends to Council the South Burnett Regional Council Water Restrictions Policy, Statutory 015, be adopted as presented. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Jones. A seconder. Thank you, Councillor Froloff. A little bit of background here, councillors, before we call on Manager Lowe to provide a bit more detail. And of course, the Water Restrictions Policy provides an operational framework within which Council makes decisions in relation to prospective water restrictions. And the policy as provided here is presented effectively on that basis. The policy provides a graduated scale of controls to promote water demand management to ensure good water conservation practices within our region. Of course, we know that our region punches well above its weight in terms of water conservation already. I think we average less than 140 litres per day per household, which includes the integration of the commercial use, which is some big numbers for our region with some big processing plants. And I know there are some bordering regional councils that would like to get to 170 litres per day as their target. We're already at 140, so I think we've done quite well in this space. But of course, the policy then further does provide that framework to manage the risk of failure to water supply in circumstances where low rainfall, system failures or water quality restrict or limit the ability to supply water. And it includes a schedule which outlines the basis upon which those decisions are made. With that brief introduction, I'd now like to hand over to Manager Tim Lowe to provide some more detail. Welcome and thank you, Tim.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I might just cover off if that's okay, but I think you've stolen most of our thunder.
Sorry, General Manager, but yeah, please proceed. Thank you.
No, that's all right. Just Tim's here if you've got questions, but basically, just as an overview, it's a revised water restriction policy for council's consideration. It's a new water restriction policy, essentially. Probably the big one there for council is that what I like about this policy is really around target consumption. So not one size fits all. So in the past, we've seen different ones where, different levels of dam means this. Is really, I think it's a modern policy for council, which allows council to set restrictions in line with what the need is, particularly around consumption. And given that the dam level for us as a region is not actually the number one trigger for us. It's actually our allocation control. And what that allows us to do is to scale up and scale down. So we think it's a lot more user friendly. One of the things there we have made an amendment for is obviously council is a large water user within the region. Essentially what we'll be able to do is introduce water management plans in conjunction with our Parks and Gardens teams. And what we'll be looking to do is roll that out with Mark over the next probably the first quarter of the year if we can, to look that we're using water efficiently as possible. I note too that we use a lot of Class A now in different areas. So Mark's team actually comes and picks up pods. So Rogers Drive roundabout is actually watered with Class A, the trees and that there. So and obviously the Class A coming into the KTP project as well, which is an efficient saving for council. So it encourages good responsible water use by homeowners, but also by industry and those people who are major water users as well. So again, I think the policy is very practical. Just with implementation, Mr. Mayor, we will remain on level 3. There's a slight change, obviously, with that. What it will be is, in all honesty, a little bit of suck it and see for the first bit as we introduce these things. If our consumption increases, then obviously we'll come back and have a discussion with council around our consumption needs and our targets. So, yeah, I look forward to it. And I think too, just one thing, if I might add, the policy offers more opportunity for compliance by residential people. I think it's more practical, in line with what people actually use. And offers better watering times also for the community to use water more responsibly as well. So, yeah.
Thank you, General Manager, and thank you to the work undertaken by yourself and Manager Tim and your team in again bringing this forward, and the way in which you do manage a very considered and measured approach to the imposition of water restrictions. Thank you very much. To the floor, Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know we've got exceptionally good water users across the region. I just noticed in the policy there is the provision for council to issue an infringement notice to somebody not complying with the rules. And I just wanted to understand better the supporting procedural process for that. Is that more on an ad hoc basis if somebody reports somebody misappropriately using water, or how we might actually enforce that if we do in fact enforce that? And if we need to enforce that, to be honest, because I know how, country people like us really value water, so I'm sure it probably doesn't happen, but I noticed it was in the policy, so I would appreciate that clarification.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so it's basically a lot of the infringements come about from reported by residents, also observed by staff, and also the compliance officer. So having said that, there is no at this point in time there is no existing policy that there is no existing water restriction policy, I should say. So therefore, this is new ground. So the intent will be that you would offer you would visit the person that's allegedly breached, give them a verbal warning. If this continues to go, we'd do an enforcement through the compliance officers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No further questions.
Right. No, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Manager. Okay, let's go up. Councillor Duff, you're a late entry.
Oh, no, I have, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to thank you for putting in the council water efficiency management plan as a dot point. That was my feedback, because I know that last term of council there was a big concern about the fact that we weren't our council organisation weren't watering gardens, and it was due to the water restrictions, and it was just they were following the residential and commercial process. So I'm just really happy that that's been included, so thank you.
Okay, anyone further? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 610 at 83, sorry, is the Works for Queensland and Capital Project Update Report. And so at the end of May, capital expenditure, as reported previously, is tracking at 62% of the total capital budget and 84% when committed costs are included in expenditure. Welcome, Councillor Henshin. Apologies accepted, Councillor Henson, thank you, and duly acknowledged, and we'll look forward to hearing your story over morning tea. Thank you. Joining us, and we'll note that Councillor Henson's now joined the meeting. Okay, 6:10 again. Council's current 2021 capital budget, externally funded projects funded by either grant funded or developer contributions, make up 33%. As at 31 May, capital expenditure for externally funded projects is tracking at 71% and 88% where committed costs are included. Every year, Council adopts a capital budget, and we call that our CapEx, made up of capital projects to be delivered in that financial year. Projects within this budget have various funding sources, including works under construction from the prior year, funded depreciation, restricted cash, and proceeds from the sale of fleet, alongside grant funding and developer contributions. Grant funding and developer contributions are the two externally funded sources from which both often have milestones and target completion dates to have either completed the project or spent the money. Sometimes, if the money isn't fully spent by the milestone date, the funding can be unclaimable, or if already received, may need to be returned to the funding body. Council therefore prioritises the completion of externally funded capital programs. Council's 2021 capital budget includes grant funding and developer contributions from the following funding bodies: Works for Queensland, state government's very successful local government program, the Drought Communities program, the federal government's very important program, Roads to Recovery for drought, the Transport Infrastructure Development Scheme, known as TIDS, Local Roads Community Infrastructure from the federal government, known as LRCI, STIP, School Transport Infrastructure Program, CATCON, the Civil Allied Technical Construction Proprietary Limited Fund, and GE, the GE Renewable Energy Fund. The report provides the capital expenditure, CapEx, report at 31 May, and also provides a summary by funding source, and it is recommended that the Executive and Finance and Corporate Standing Committee accept and receive the information as presented in this report. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, seconder. Councillor Duff, to the floor. Councillor Shoemaker.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and certainly thank you to the Finance Committee for the report. It is an extensive report. I have raised this previously in previous meetings, and I do have serious concerns around carrying over funds. And I see that our capital expenditure is, as you've stated, Mr. Mayor, tracking at 62% of our total capital budget, which means there's 38% capacity. And that does concern me, being that we're on the 16th of June when receiving this information. I'm not a fan of carryovers. I believe they are risky, and I think we did see that firsthand last year. I believe Council needs to understand why projects haven't been completed or delivered, and I certainly appreciate the focus on funding first. I think that always has to be our priority. However, it's my view we need to reassess some of these capital projects that have started or have minimal amounts that have actually been committed in terms of their priority and relevance. All capital projects are reviewed by Council with our budget deliberations. I know we've got more work happening on that this week with further budget workshops. And I have serious concerns that not completing CapEx during the year in which we've allocated CapEx means that there is a backlog of projects, and I don't think it's responsible to start new projects when we've got a backload of projects that haven't yet been started. From what I can see in this report, there are projects that are overspent, there are projects that are underspent, and I have serious concerns about the risk of committing costs, starting the project, noting that there are many factors that change, and we know that. I was just talking to a cabinet maker last week who says because of COVID, plywood has increased by 25%. I've spoken with builders who have actually torn up building contracts because they can't deliver, they can't build the house for what they quoted 12 months ago. So I have significant concerns around the revaluation of true resource needs for some of these projects. I believe carryovers should be by exception, and they need to be justified by practical considerations. And I don't believe in the 12 months that is something that we always do very well. I think the size of the original budget allocation at the time, council makes that decision, and certainly I know each of us take that very seriously when it comes to doing our financial due diligence, that the amount that we're giving is recommended, it is our belief it's appropriate in relation to the project to be delivered. I have serious concerns with carryovers in terms of loss of policy control. If carryovers are large, there's a potential conflict between what council's actually spending money on and the priorities of council, and they shift. We've since done our corporate plan this year. Impact to the bottom line, I do see there's a hindrance to current council priorities, and the timing of a project impacts council's reputation and the trust held in our community. I know this firsthand because there have been projects this year that I've said will be delivered on, and then had residents come back to me and say, where are we at with that? Particularly when they see us spending money on projects which are part of Works for Queensland, for instance, which might be more of a nice to have rather than a need. So I would like to know more around, does council's leadership team have a conceptual criteria or analysis that informs carry forwards? And I recognise that can be difficult, but I want to know more about this process so that we don't end up in a position like we did this year where we had, I believe it was near 7 million, and I stand corrected if I've got that wrong. There's certainly been a number of numbers thrown around in this chamber for the last couple of weeks, so my apologies if I had, but it was significant carryovers, and I personally will not be supporting carrying overs to that extent again this year. So I'd like to know more, Mr. CEO, and certainly from the senior leaders here, how do we actually, what is the criteria and the analysis that informs council's approach to carryovers?
Thank you, Councillor. I'll go to you shortly, Mr. CEO, but before I do, I just want to put something into context to a bit here. With the external funding sources, just to note that inside those percentages, LRCI funding is 1.64 million. We do have 590,000 unspent, but just to make everyone aware, that's actually a calendar year allocation. So we have until December. Is that correct, or is that to June, Aaron? I thought it was.
Yeah, no,
annual.
sorry, through Mr. Mayor. So there's two different LRCI programs. So the LRCI program, the current one is due for completion this month. So those projects have been wrapped up now. So just the LRCI program, I'm not sure where that number comes from that's in the report, whether that includes the new funding. I would think it probably does not, maybe.
1.64.
Yeah, so
So
that'll
it
be
wouldn't
the
include the
finance.
1.89.
So through Mr. Mayor, that'll be the financial allocation for this financial year. So those claims are being pushed through now. So the main one for us is the close up of the Alfred Street project up here, which is underway a couple of weeks ago. So they'll be processed through there now.
Thank you, General Manager. Sorry, Councillor, I just wanted to get that clarified. Mr. CEO, thank you.
Yeah,
Councillor's
and
question.
just so that I'm clear, because it's a bit slow. So the ones the mayors are talking about is like the Wandai Industrial, they're due in December. Yeah, so it's the two different streams. Yep. Good question, Councillor. Excellent question. And it's an area that we've done very poorly in for a very long time. And not even going to, we have, I could come up with a whole raft of different discussion points on it. It's been the only, well, not the only, but the really positive thing, it's been vigorously discussed. Now, there is several different opinions in this space about, I detest the word carryover, and I have for a very long time. The council had a history. Again, I don't want it to sound like it served the council. The process that was used served the council well over a long period of time. Now, however, it delivered its projects and everyone, but it's a way of looking at things, and I've seen it before, particularly in the Western councils and the smaller councils that I work for, where the council was never able to deliver its capital program, but the actual it just didn't have the workforce, but the capital program, it actually almost became by default the project listing of what was in the 4 years, because you would load up a 1 year and then you wouldn't be able to spend it, and it would protect you. It would literally protect the cash base because the money couldn't get out the door. But then next year, we'll just roll them over again. So it becomes by default a rolling program over several years. Modern times and modern ways of doing things, it's not ideal. And again, to be clear, that list of 7 million was 23 odd year before. So a whole tribe of water process stuff got jettisoned. That goes way back before Tim and different managers. And there was projects that were padded in there. Is it perfect? No. Is there a lot more work to do? There is. The confidence I can give, there is an extremely vigorous debate going on within the leadership team as to what constitutes a carryover. Now, there are some projects that that are multi-year. So you get into the issue of what's a works in progress, what's a project that isn't started but it doesn't want to be lost. The ones that don't get, and I totally accept this from a councillor's point of view, and it is disappointing that it isn't delivered. If something is adopted in the budget, ideally it should be delivered in that year. I mean, that's rainstorms, cyclones, public consultation, as we've seen. I don't know if I can use the Blackbutt example, that's been slowed down. Now, they're projects that shouldn't be lost. They're not whips, anyway, I'll use my language. They're not whips, but that's something clearly identified that's a priority that is unable to be delivered this year, needs to be put up in the capital program and rolled into next year, so it's in next year's capital. That can be done at the front end. The bit that I don't like seeing happen is when we get to where we were, and last year was better, where we end up in August and these are all rolled over, and you have a whole list of another $10 million funneling into the system, and you think, wow, we're going to be flat out doing what we've already got. So my learnings out of this is to be much more bold with you in far as what we can achieve, and certainly in the capital workshops, because we just can't continue to load up a capital budget and the hope and expectation it might be delivered. And as we get more sophisticated in these systems, if we're looking at this as a rolling program, so no one wants to necessarily lose the projects, but if we're looking at this as a rolling process, what's wrong with, okay, we're going to do this 10, 20 million in year one, this 10 million in year two, and this 10 million in year three. Target amount, have them designed properly, have them costed properly, so we're not chasing our tail, trying to take a best guess at a number. And your point on the market is so true. The market has moved massively, so we have to be agile and continue to develop the organisation to be agile so it can adapt to changing market circumstances. Now, and that's their reasons, they're not excuse. You come back and you say, okay, the market's changed, this has happened, we're dealing with the facts and nothing but the facts. In those ones, it's not a case of not wanting to deliver or not being even able. The delays in the delivery of equipment, because and literally, or as much as China's in the news, a lot of the stuff now is coming in from overseas. And COVID has had a massive impact on supply lines. Tim, I think your water pipes, and Pete with his park grounds, and there's significant pipeline issues in getting material here. When we do the org review, I won't go into it again today, but I think who delivers the capital program is a very active discussion. And again, it's not anything about not doing it or not pulling back on it, but I think we can streamline a couple of the delivery mechanisms. So yeah, so again, not trying to justify, and I've said a couple of times the 95% would be extremely hard to hit this year. I don't mind, and there is a difference of thought about it. I don't mind keeping it because I'll fall back to the old adage, aim for the stars, and if you hit the moon, you're halfway there. But it's an area that, yeah, I would like to see and will be looking forward to working with councillors and the senior staff to continue to improve what we do.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. General Manager.
Yeah, through Mr. Mayor, just in line with the council's comments also, and to support Mark's, we will have the carryovers on the list for capital discussion tomorrow. So that way we can give council a run through those projects to see what they are. Probably just the other thing to note is that there is significant project savings coming through in the fourth quarter, which will be applied to that number. So I think it's important to have the number in context of what's under construction, what's been saved, and what is actually hasn't started. So, to give you an idea, just in my area alone, with between Blackbutt, the phasing of KTP, the medians and the roundabout Niagara Road, there's 2.5 million there in those 4 projects. So they'll come up on tomorrow. So out of Kev's 3 million that he'll be at 30 June or whatever it is, 2.5 is tied across 4 projects. So when you look at the percentage of what they've completed outside that, they're actually quite high. Tim, I think, is in the order of 1.7 million in savings coming back in. So his carryover will be in the lines of $300,000 once that's applied. So just between Peter and myself, when we come in with our CapEx tomorrow, our intent was to have those projects that are here listed at the bottom so we can take council through them and say, well, here's so everyone's on the same page, I suppose. So, but yes, no, it's very much at the forefront of how we handle this going forward so we don't come back.
Thank you, General Manager. Clearly a work in progress. Council has a number of our strategic management processes in place, and this is clearly one of them we need to refine, as Councillor Shoemaker has indicated today. And we'll very much look forward to workshopping the details of any incomplete work over the course of the next couple of days inside this chamber. One final comment, Councillor, before we go to the vote. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd actually like to move an amendment to the recommendation.
Yes, please proceed.
So I'm happy to receive the information as presented in this report, and then just enter down, Lynelle, that council undertake a workshop in the first quarter of FY 21-22 as a priority to determine the metrics that council is comfortable with in managing carry forwards, including consideration for, then point 1 or a dot point, percentage target set that allows and informs future carryovers, ceiling with a C, sorry, ceiling on the amount, and limits on the drawdown of accumulated carryovers.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. CEO, as we normal practice, would you mind just confirming that we've got that one reasonably okay?
Yeah, that's fine, Mayor. It's literally calling for a workshop. The other is supporting. So it's within the bounds of this meeting, should you wish to adopt it.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Duff, are you comfortable as a seconder? Yea or nay? Yes, Councillor Duff is. Okay. Speakers for or against? Councillor Shoemaker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly I note the conversation here in the chamber this morning. By no means I want to get on board with this. I think council, together with our senior leadership team, we need to join your robust debate, Mr. CEO, because I equally understand everybody has different views in terms of carryovers. I guess the purpose of this workshop for us is it's an opportunity to formalise the conversation between council and our senior leadership team and actually consider how are we going to approach what has been a very difficult task for council over the last years. And certainly I acknowledge the work of the CEO and the team, to go from $23 million of carryovers the year before to $7 million is a great achievement. I certainly never want to see our council in that position again. And for me, this is about having an open and honest conversation. It's about working together as a leadership team It's great to hear there have been savings, and I know through our budget process there's a real commitment from our council to continue that great work. I really see this as a bit of an opportunity. I agree with the CEO. I did test carryover as well, and I think, as the CEO has said, there's a process that served council for a period of time. It's not ideal, and I feel the time is now to actually really unpack this conversation with the entire team and put some metrics that we can hold ourselves account to, so this time next year we don't end up in the same position where we've got a report wondering if we're going to be able to complete next year's CapEx project because of that backlog. So I welcome and thank the opportunity to have those conversations with the team. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I totally agree with the councillor in the comments that she's made. I've listened to the CEO, and I've got to say that as the councillor indicated, there's been a $16 million reduction in the last 12 months in our carryovers, and that is no coincidence because our previous council and I have been well and truly renowned for pushing, absolutely detest carryovers. I can't see the need for them, and Mark, CEO, referred to Blackbutt for an issue. There is certain circumstances where there is issues that pop up right at the very last minute that puts us back, and they have legitimate reasons to be carried over, and that's the discussions that you're encouraging, council. I fully support that. But we as a council previously, as part of that council, we really were aware of the fact that carryovers are out of control, and absolutely hate carryovers. I believe that if we allocate it in there, and for whatever reason there is legitimate answers for certain things, but it's just, I just really do hate seeing carryovers, and I fully support the workshop. But I do want to acknowledge the fact that all the staff, going back a couple of years now, have made a concerted effort and have made that reduction, a significant reduction, as you've highlighted, of 16 million. And I would like to think, and I have faith in the staff, that they will continue to work forward, and I think we can get this down to a zero carryover, and that's our goal. So, yeah, thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I support the recommendation, particularly because what happens with, in my opinion, in the budget process, the community has the expectation that those projects will be delivered. It's in the budget, and I've always had concerns that if for whatever reason that particular project got pushed back and didn't get done, that you'd have to take it to the table again when the community expectation is that project will be delivered. So I absolutely think that we need to get this right, particularly on those projects that we've put out there and said this is going to happen, and the community the council then has to try and to re-prosecute the argument in the next budget when it might miss out. So very, very keen to see this happen. Thank you.
Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Let's keep rolling. We've got a lot to get through today, and I want to keep progressing before morning tea. Can we go to 7.1 at 102, the Regional Development Portfolio Report? My pleasure to invite Councillor Shoemaker to present such. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd certainly like to thank the Executive Services team and CEO Mark for your support in helping me prepare this month's report and what has been a very busy month. So my apologies, it doesn't have the normal flavour and tone that I like to add to these, but there has been a lot of work done, and I'd like to acknowledge the team for helping me compile this. I'd like to kick off. Did you know South Burnett Regional Council's gross regional product is estimated at $1.94 billion, which represents 0.52% of the state's gross state product. That's a NEHA stat from 2020. It's an incredible stat, shows the real strength and resilience of our community. The draft 2021-26 Regional Development Strategy. The above fact demonstrates what a valuable contribution our region is to the state economy and the need for a progressive and achievable regional development strategy. Over this past month, myself, Councillor Jones and the CEO have met with the Kingaroy Chamber of Commerce and a significant agricultural production company to gain feedback on the draft plan. The response to the draft has been both informative and positive. Further consultation meetings are planned during June and early July, with the draft regional development strategy being proposed to be presented to the July ordinary meeting of Council. There is still plenty of time for comment on the draft strategy and feedback available, and there's a feedback form available on Council's website. The Regional Development Advisory Committee, I've certainly been having a lot of conversations about this committee, and we have forwarded formal letters to stakeholders to see if they may be interested in being involved in the Regional Development Advisory Committee. And should they express an interest to be involved, we will progress a report to Council for endorsement. I want to remind the community the purpose of that committee is really about bringing creative thinking, research and innovation to the table. It's about thinking differently around some of the issues our region currently is facing, and putting some suggestions or solutions on the table for consideration. So I'm very excited to bring that report back to Council, because I know I've been tapping a number of our local quiet achievers and entrepreneurs on the shoulder and having some very big conversations with them about the opportunities here in our region, particularly for sustainability moving forward. The Trade and Investment Workshop Queensland, I had the pleasure of recently attending the Investment Readiness Workshop hosted by TIQ in Gympie during the past month. And I'm really interested, certainly once we come out of the fog of budget, bringing TIQ to Council so that we can have some conversations about how our region can really benefit from some of the work they're doing. It was amazing to meet with Something's Country. I'd like to call out that local business here. I was astounded to find out at the recent Chamber of Commerce meeting that they've purchased a wholesale business, and they're actually running wholesale from their premises here in Kingaroy across the whole of Australia. And I think there's so much incredible investment and innovation happening in our local businesses, and I know they're exceptionally excited about the Kingaroy Transformation Project and the fast speed internet, which is currently a hindrance to some of those businesses really going ahead. So I welcome the opportunity to bring TIQ here in the first quarter to have a workshop and discussion with Council around how we can leverage some of that international and domestic investment that's available to really bolster our local businesses. Rail Trails, I'd like to thank CEO Mark Pitt, who recently attended a meeting with representatives from Toowoomba and Somerset Regional Councils, Ipswich City Council and Transport and Main Roads as part of Council's commitment to the Brisbane Valley Rail Trail. I understand the meeting was very successful and did clarify some of our understanding of the management of that trail. Our council is regularly speaking with BVRT and KKRT stakeholders and partners regarding the opportunities that both these trails present. Certainly it's incredible to see. I've got some rail trail counters here. I haven't got the direct locations of where the counters are for their safety, but it's incredible to see in April 2021 we had 3,207 passes on the Kingaroy Trail, and in May we had 3,888 passes. So, you know, the difference there of 600 odd people just on the Kingaroy Trail is astronomical. It really shows the growth of those assets. And as everyone is saying, particularly with COVID, natural tourism, attractions, opportunities for adventure, opportunities for the big blue skies, fresh clean air that we offer here in the South Burnett, certainly to enjoy cycling, are looked for. So Murrumbidgee, 983 passes in April compared to 1,327 in May. So there goes another 400 odd people increase there. Tingura, an increase from 991 passes in April to 1,085. It just shows, even with the cooler weather, the growth and the importance of that, that infrastructure. And I can only imagine, I wish I could quantify more the actual economic value of those passes, because certainly having those people stop in towns like Murrumbidgee and certainly Warrulan, the pub there is always so busy. So it's great to see people spending money in our local communities. Tourism, it was a great pleasure to participate in the TEQ discussion regarding strategic direction of Bacon Fest and give feedback on this significant event. I also had the opportunity to provide input and discussion with the Bunya Trail product and experience plan that has been commissioned by Peter Homan from Southern Queensland Country Tourism. The project is a collaborative effort between the Bunya People's Aboriginal Corporation, SQCT, and other key stakeholders, and will provide a guideline for future product and business development. And that particularly has an Indigenous flavour, and this year being the Year of Indigenous Tourism, it's great to see Southern Queensland Country Tourism are really leading the way in trying to put some of those product opportunities together. So the scope of the work, it's my understanding, identification of key stakeholders, development of a vision and some key principles to guide the future development of the trail, research, any history documentation on the trail, identification of product development opportunities and what action would be needed to guide future development and activation, market potential including target markets, an action plan which will identify some ranked options for experience development, activation and mapping of the trail. And the trail is very much a songs trail, so I'm yet to learn more about that, but there were a number of songs that I understand First Nations people sang to each other when they were finding localities like the Bundy Mountains, and they're trying really hard to actually map some of that culture and bring that story together. So I know there's been some great work done already, and I look forward to the outcomes of that work that Peter Homan's undertaking. In concluding this report, I'd also like to take the opportunity to congratulate, I recently caught up with the Farm to Fork Collective, and I think there are enormous opportunities for agritourism in our region. You'll notice if you go through Arulin, the little shop, which was previously the vet, and previous to that, the original bakery, the actual brick oven is still in the back, and the work the team's doing there in terms of really repurposing that so it can be a place. Warulin is the dead centre of the South Burnett, and it will be a place where all local producers, regardless of what you may grow or make, can stock their items there and sell them with ease. So I'm looking forward to being able to take my family out there and explain to my children that you can't have oranges at the moment because they're not in season, but we could have plums, and these have been grown in Cumbia, for instance. You know, really great stories there, and I commend the Farm to Fork Collective. Been working with them, and it's great to hear they got the FRRR Tackling Tough Times funding and the support of the Tron Community Partnership Fund. I think there's big things to come in that area. Also from an adventure tourism perspective, and I'd certainly like to thank GM O'May and his team who have been helping the South Burnett Mountain Bike Club in progressing the Gordon Brook Mountain Bike Trails project. They've also been successful in FRRR Tackling Tough Times and Tron Community Partnership Fund, and the work that that crew have got in the pipeline really will bring state and national championship events here to the South Burnett, really build on the work that's been done in Wondai. And certainly I've been out there on weekends. It's just great to see so many local families and young people, young children having a go at mountain biking. I think the benefits aren't just from a tourism perspective. Certainly, as you can see from the rail trail figures, thousands of people are visiting our region every year for cycling and adventure tourism outcomes, but the actual opportunity for social benefit to see young people actually being a part of mountain biking and the sport that is really exciting. And I'd like to thank and acknowledge the South Burnett Mountain Bike Club for their work. The business leadership breakfast, we had the breakfast that the Kingaroy Chamber of Commerce held with Neil Wentworth, which was really quite amazing when it talked about leading the change that we'd like to see. And I certainly have seen a real uplift around our local Kingaroy area anyway, in terms of people really bringing their ideas forward and keen to drive some progress. So I think certainly a force to be reckoned with when we've got local businesses saying this is what we think we should be going after, and then certainly the willingness to be a part of it is great. And I'd like to acknowledge the Chamber of Commerce for their insight in bringing Neil to the region, and I know there's much more work to be done in that space. CEO Mark and I also attended the NBN business workshops. It was great to be able to talk about digital connectivity, and I know the opportunities offered by QCN Fibre someday when we'll be able to connect all those dots are enormous. So I'd really like to acknowledge the Chamber of Commerce for hosting that event and Council for your support. And the business breakfast in Wondai, that was just an excellent morning. Thank you, Councillor Henshin, for the invitation and bringing all of us councillors together. It was just fabulous to meet with the movers and shakers of Wondai, and certainly to meet the new owners of the Tingara Hotel and the Wondai Colonial Country Motel. I know they've got an incredible menu, really trying to showcase local food, and I encourage all of my local my councillors to see if we can get together for dinner there some night. And of course, I've been catching up with stakeholders regarding their feedback on the regional development strategy. There's been some really great insights collected, and I look forward to bringing those forward. I think there's enormous opportunity for this region to be an energy hub into the future, and also to really maximise the water resources that we have and the connections that we have. So looking forward to continuing that work. And just before closing, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'm very keen to catch up. I know we've had confirmation of the remaining National Water Infrastructure Development Fund funding come through. So very keen to catch up once we all come out of the budget fog around water security and progressing those priorities for council. So we're all clear in terms of our roadmap forward. So certainly it's been a busy month, Mr. Mayor, and I'd like to move that my regional development portfolio report be received for information. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Henshin, thank you. Comments, questions from the floor? Councillor Duff?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great report, Councillor Shoemaker. Just agree with you on the talks with TIQ, but also thinking that we should have some conversations with TISB too. When you see what they're doing in Toowoomba Regional Council, it's just amazing. So I'm keen to see that happen. And also just wanted to find out, I know there's a report on the Visit South Burnett, but I always ask you this question: where are we at with your connections with as portfolio holder with tourism and Visit South Burnett? Thank you.
Sure, through you, Mr. Mayor. I have an informal meeting with the chair, Jason Kinsella, set up in the calendar. That come through after the Wondai Business Breakfast, which was great. So we will be catching up with Jason. As I've said before, certainly it's a key priority of mine for the first quarter of next financial year for council to meet with Visit South Burnett to review the tourism strategy, the draft tourism strategy that they've presented to us based on the membership feedback that they've received, and certainly consider that partnership agreement at that point in time. So yes, there's certainly been some movement. There's a long way to go, and I look forward to continuing to try to work together in that space.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything further? Okay, thank you, Councillor, for that excellent report, particularly in relation to the development, the Regional Development Strategy and the Regional Development Advisory Committee. Just in terms of the Regional Development Advisory Committee, first of all, just wanting to confirm that, of course, we have a number of community-based development groups across the South Burnett region, and many are made up of small business leaders, as I'm sure you would well know. And so I'm just wondering, just in terms of the engagement from council, in terms of the composition of the RDAC, if we can call it that, for the South Burnett, have we looking to engage with those groups that are based, for example, and not exclusive, but not including areas such as Proston, Mergen, Wondai, Nanango, and Blackbutt, to offer membership broadly across our geographics? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, I'm open to any recommendations you'd like to put forward, and I've certainly highlighted that to the Chamber before. If you've got specific people that you'd like me to reach out to, open to have that conversation. I've had a number of conversations with who I see and who have really been at the forefront in forming the regional development strategy, and many of the conversations I've had. The way I see the Regional Development Advisory Committee going forward is that will not be an exclusive group. They will not be closed door meetings. Certainly similar to the way in which council meetings run now, this is really about a think tank and creating that energy for creative problem solving. So by all means, every the way I see what I would like to see with this Regional Development Advisory Committee, and I've certainly had these discussions with you previously, organisations like BAIDO, Red Earth, the Kingaroy Chamber of Commerce, the Mergen Business Development Association, the Blackbutt Community Business Group, certainly if there's a Proston Roundtable, if they've got ideas or solutions or things that they would like to table with the committee, they will be more than welcome at the table to bring that information forward. And I really see this group as an opportunity to bring those thoughts and views from outside the region in as well. So I've already got a long list of people I will be tapping on the shoulder. Some real incredible entrepreneurs and innovative people who have done things in their different regions. There's a few in Toowoomba that certainly, you know, I think it will be important to bring those people to the table, to share our learnings and to carve out the solutions together, Mr. Mayor. By all means, happy to take any of your ideas or proposals forward. My approach has been to have some conversations with these people because, as you can imagine, not everyone. I've been actually quite surprised at some people don't see themselves as, and it's really as important enough, if I can use that word, it's probably not, to be a part of a group like this. And I don't see it that way at all. I actually see it as bringing people who are genuinely love our region as much as we do here in council, who are thinking big, trying something new, learning some hard lessons, bringing them to the table. So it won't be an exclusive group, Mr. Mayor. Certainly we're looking for the movers and shakers. We're looking for some positive ideas and certainly how we can work together and collaborate into the future. So I am looking forward to bringing that report to council. We did have a bit of a delay with some of our letters, and certainly with the backlog of workshops, it's been a pretty full-time gig just talking to a lot of these people, trying to catch up and see where we're at. So I will be bringing that back as a matter of priority because it's my intention to kick that off first quarter next financial year.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, certainly taking up that opportunity, and thank you for that. I'd certainly like to recommend, Mr. CEO, through you, if we could, to ensure that we have extended an invitation to the leading small business groups based in Proston, Mergen, Wandai, Nanango and Blackbutt to provide nominations from their communities in relation to prospective members of the RDAC. And certainly councils, divisional councils, if you have other communities that you think we should be reaching out to, please get that information to Councillor Shoemaker and to the CEO. But certainly I know in Proston, Mergen, Wandai, Nanango and Blackbutt, we do have lead groups, and I'd love to see us extend the olive branch to them, if we haven't done so already at least. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you, it's not my intention to have that lead group at the table. Certainly in my...
No, Councillor, sorry, just to nominate someone from their community.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Doesn't have to be a
I would like to
rep.
talk to you some more about that in relation to the approach that I've taken in this first instance, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, if you've got concerns, I can assure you it's a broad spectrum of people, broad composition from across industries and across our region, but certainly happy to chat some more about that offline. I won't be inviting the groups. They will be invited to be part of the continued discussion, but I don't want to see the dysfunction of what's happened in some previous advisory committees where council has tried that approach and it's been unsuccessful. I'm setting this one up for success.
I think you've misunderstood me, Councillor. What I'm suggesting is that we reach out as the local community peak bodies for them to nominate people from their communities. So I'm not suggesting that they have a membership. So that, for example, I'm not suggesting the Mergen Business Association has a membership. What I'm suggesting is that we reach out to them as the peak body in their community and provide the opportunity for them to nominate individuals from their region, they're on their part of the region, to be on that body, because I think part of success that you're looking for would be to make sure we do have broad regional representation alongside broad sector representation. So so if that can happen, Mr. CEO, I'd be very grateful. Thank you. Any other comments on that? If not, on to the regional development strategy. Councillor, thank you for bringing us up to date on that. And I see the report will be coming to, I think it's the July ordinary meeting of council with a proposal as to a draft. Just wanting to get an update. How are we tracking in terms of KPIs. I know that you fully understand the importance of clear, measurable KPIs in any strategy. I'd certainly like to, I'm keen to see that our document is able to articulate to the region that we are actually confirming real and tangible KPIs that will produce outcomes that we can target for, that we can measure and report on, particularly in relation to things like expansion of existing industries, the development of new industries, job creation, particularly long-term job creation, in relation to unemployment statistics and our gross regional product, the growth of our gross regional product. So I'm really keen to see that we're going to actually have those built into the strategy, that they're going to be real, tangible, things that people can actually connect with, and that we can then report on to say, well, this is what we've delivered as part of the rollout of the strategy. So keen to get an update on that if you could. Thank you.
Yeah, certainly, Mr. Mayor. As I've discussed many times before, the approach and that approach that we've worked through as a council is that we will develop and adopt the strategy in the first instance, and the second instance will be the development of the regional work plan, and that really will focus on the nitty-gritty. So I'm talking about, let's bed down our highest strategic priorities as a council, and then certainly with the nitty-gritty, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate there's some, I'm very ambitious in that area, as are you, and I welcome the conversations to set out that regional work plan, which will really articulate how, and then it will also articulate how we'll measure our success. What are our key performance indicators in that space? So there's still a lot of work to be done in that space. The regional development strategy is really about setting those strategic priorities for our region now, and then that will inform the work plan. It's timely with the regional, with Queensland's regional development, sorry, I've got the words wrong, regional plan, that we have something at the table. So as I've said time and time again, this regional development strategy, it will evolve, definitely. And the more conversations and information we have at the table, the more thinking we put into this, the document will evolve, as will our key performance indicators. But I'm with you all the way, Mr. Mayor. Measurement, there's no point in setting a goal if you can't measure it. And at this point in time, I think we need to be clearer in our strategy. By all means, I've tried to align those meetings about our regional development strategy with your calendar, Mr. Mayor, and unfortunately, you've been unable to attend a lot of those meetings that we've had, and you're always welcome at the table to inform the conversations we're having about the strategy. It'd be great to have you there. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. CEO, perhaps if you could pass that on to the Executive Services team, keen to have that a priority in my calendar if they can for any future meetings. I'd be very grateful because I am very invested in this space. It's a high priority for our region. So perhaps if they can put that at the top of the list, that'd be great. Yeah, look, thank you very much. So very much, Council committee will look forward to seeing those KPIs come through in the regional work plan as that's discussed through Council and the community. Yes, very, very keen to see those KPIs very clearly bedded down in that regional work plan. Looking forward to that, and then seeing us deliver on some real and tangible outcomes in terms of those key indicators for the region. Okay, anything further? If not, let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. The Regional Development and Tourism Monthly Update at 104. Can we do a quick overview of that? And then I think we'll have a break at 11:15 a.m. So we have that there, and as we receive each month, thank you very much, Mr. CEO, for bringing that forward. And the recommendation is that the Regional Development and Tourism Monthly Update for May 2021 be received for information. Do we have a mover? Thanks, Councillor Duff. Seconder, Councillor Shoemaker. Comments, questions in relation to the report? Councillor Shoemaker.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd certainly like to acknowledge the tourism team who have worked hard behind the scenes, and also thank the support of GMO May in some of the improvements that have happened at our Visitor Information Centre and Museum through those CAPEX projects that have been funded with Works for Queensland and alike. I'd encourage everyone to go have a look. It's annoyed me for quite some time, those information boards at the back of the information centre, which were all peeling and you couldn't see the words, and I just think it's so exciting to really celebrate our heritage here in Kingaroy and the South Burnett, but also our industries that are really carved out where we are and who we are today. So I'd encourage everybody to go and have a look at the information presented there. I know that wasn't an easy project. I'd certainly like to call out the small business friendly charter and appreciate council's support with that charter. I just think I'm very excited about where we as a council, the leadership will show in supporting our small businesses in that space. And I'd like to acknowledge before closing out Volunteer Week. I know many of us councillors got to a number of different morning teas that were held across the region to thank and acknowledge our volunteers. It's a giant job they do in our community, and I'd certainly encourage anyone who's looking for purpose or meaning to consider volunteering and spending some time with the incredible teams at our visitor information centres. The statistics are there. It's incredible to see still enormous numbers of people travelling through our region, and good sales through our visitor information centres as well, which is great to see so many people want to take a piece of the South Burnett home with them, Mr Mayor. It's also great to hear, and I know I've met with Tracy and the team who are doing some work around some printed advertising around dog-friendly accommodation and eateries in the area, photographers' trails, and our South Burnett wineries. So there's a flyer menu and certificates that have been done for the Festival of the Dams, and promotional material, of course, for Opera Queensland. And I'd just like to thank the team who made that possible last night. That was an absolutely extraordinary event to sit in a hall full of local residents who really just, on a Tuesday night, to be out on a school night, watching a performance like that in the South Burnett, incredible. Honestly, you had to pinch yourself. I had goosebumps the whole time. The performance was exceptional, but above all, to see so many of our local residents having a good time, enjoying each other's company and being out together, I think it really lifted the spirits of our community. And I'd like to thank our local member, Deb Frecklington, who I believe on the steps of Parliament House encouraged Opera Queensland to think about Kingaroy for its regional tour, and certainly Councillor Potter, who's absent today, for bringing that event and her work in connecting the dots, working with CEO Mark and the team to bring that event to the South Burnett. I certainly hope they come back again sometime. It was brilliant, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duff.
Just a question through you, Mr Mayor. Just on that, the Wonday Heritage Museum, I just wanted to know whether we've sorted their signage issue. I know that they've been concerned for a long time about their signage, and I just they've spoken to the Mayor. I think they've spoken to Councillor Henson and myself about getting more improved signage. Has that been sorted?
Yeah, I'd have to take that on notice. I'm not sure what has been done there or what's proposed there. Is that on road signage or at the museum itself? Directional signage? Or
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think it's a combination of both. I think it was the road signage on the highway and also their actual entrance signage, so that people knew it. They're almost like hidden away, and they've always been concerned about that.
Thank you, General Manager. Let's go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Just conferring with the CEO, I think we can probably roll through and wrap up the last two items in the general, and then we can move into confidential after morning tea. So if we can progress on 7.3 is the VSB partnership agreement at 110, and we have that there. Committee. So a little bit of background, of course. Reminder that we do have an agreement with Visit South Burnett, known as VSB, and that Visit South Burnett contacted Council seeking a review of the partnership agreement dated 13 October 2020. In particular, that Council give consideration to adequate provision be made in Council's 21-22 budget to enable VSB to continue its valuable work on behalf of the region, and an opportunity will soon be provided to undertake a revision of our agreement considered necessary, and to finalise ongoing funding arrangements. The terms of the partnership agreement stipulate that the term of this agreement is from 1 September 2020 to 31 August 2021, and this agreement will be reviewed by both parties on and about 1 March 2021, with the intention of entering a new agreement to review the funding arrangements to align with the new tourism strategy to be developed under Clause 4B, such determined to be made no later than 31 March 2021. Now, of course, we've had a number of issues pop up, so that's now, of course, been extended. And of course, at Council's ordinary council meeting in 19 August 2020, Council endorsed a resolution which gave rise to the agreement with Visit South Burnett. So the recommendation on this item is that, where are we, 110? Could we get that up, Linnell, for me? Thank you. I've lost my page here. Oh, sorry, here it is. That the review with Visit South Burnett Partnership Agreement report be received for information and noted for review during Council's first quarter budget deliberations. Do we have a mover? Councillor Duff, second to Councillor Jones. Okay, to the floor. Comments, questions? No one at this stage? Okay, rightio. Well, we'll let that go straight to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. The next one, final one here, is 7.4 at 113. Material change of use in relation to a service station and ancillary shop at 4 Scott Street, Wandai. Would you mind just giving us an introduction? Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Mr. Mayor, actually, firstly, this one sits outside its normal cycle. It would have been dealt with last week. So I would, if council is willing to deal with it, just a procedural resolution that the matter be discussed and dealt with today.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. I'll hereby move a procedural resolution that the matter be discussed and dealt with in today's committee meeting. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Duff. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. CEO. Okay, we'll continue through. Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Okay, there's it's probably through to general manager, but it's one that's getting a little bit time sensitive, and we're trying to push it through, but just get it through so it can continue on its hoops to assist with the other parties. So hence why it's today. It will still need to go back to the general, but with the general being pushed back the week because of Elga, it was necessary to air it today in front of, not in front of, but with council. So, General Manager, I think.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Mr. We're just trying to meet our. We've got a decision-making period on these planning applications, and because this one will be coming to council, and I think the decision-making period was due to expire on the 28th of June, and so we've with the applicants extended that to the 30th of June, so we can fit in with this council meeting. But yeah, we didn't want to try extend that decision-making period out for another month, so that's why we're trying to bring it forward. So this is for a application for a service station in Scott Street, Wandai. So this is just as you're coming up the hill from Dingo Creek on the left before you get to the sort of shops in Wandai. You'll see from the map. So this one's been out for impact accessible. So it's been out for public notification. There was one submission which is included in the report on the application. The zoning of the property, it's in the local centre zone, so it is zoned as in that commercial style fashion. So it's been through. So it's six bowsers, got the canopy over the bowsers. It's got an acoustic fence, so you've got residential dwellings to the west of it, I imagine. So. There's fencing and acoustic panelling put through there. The objection, the objection or the submission was basically based on a couple of points. So they were raising the fact that in the local centre zone, the development should be of the same built form as the rest of the local centre zone. So meaning it should be in the same awning style and that. So if you're looking up further up the street where you've got shops and awnings coming out, but assessing this one, there's residential dwellings directly across the road from this. It is separated from the next section of the local zone by the adjoining street. So we see that it doesn't necessarily conflict with the local centre zone. Have been through the assessments. There was comments on the access. Again, the local centre zone talks about not trying to have cars come. There is alternative access off the residential streets, and so I think the submission was suggesting that it should be off the residential street rather than the main street. The access for this one is off the main street, has been through SARA, so has been through TMR. Approved those crossings. And I think the third point was need. But essentially, yeah, we've assessed the application and believe that with the relevant conditions, certainly a number of conditions around the fuel station itself, vapour recovery and environmental things. So yeah, just recommending approval, subject to those relevant conditions.
Thank you,
And as I said, this one will come back through council next week, but we just wanted the opportunity to bring it through a standing committee, give council opportunity to review.
Thank you, General Manager. Recommendation is that the committee recommends to council that council approve the material change of use, service station ancillary shop located at 4 Scott Street, Wandai, and described as lots 808, 809, 810 on W5357, subject to the following conditions, of which there are many as presented in the agenda. Do we have a mover for such? Thank you, Councillor Jones. Second, thank you, Councillor Duff. Speakers for or against? Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just think this is a great thing for Wandai. It's just fantastic. It's long overdue to have a service station in the main highway, like coming into the town of Wandai. Just excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Anything further? Go to the vote. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Okay. Righto, 172. Yeah, get to the resolution. Thanks, Mark. Okay. Next item is recommendation that council considers the confidential reports listed below in a meeting closed to the public in accordance with section 254J of the Local Government Regulation 2012. The items are as presented from 8.1 to 8.11. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker. Seconder, Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now close at 11:23 a.m. and resume in confidential at 11:40 a.m. Thank you. Now move that council moves out of closed council to open council. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 8.1. Oh, sorry, Lionel. Yep. Good to go. Thanks, Lionel. Okay. 8.1. Recommendation is that the committee recommended to council that Sapana Regional Council agreed to provide a rate remission for property numbers as stated, and amend that existing rate remission for property numbers stated, commencing from 1 July 2021 at a total cost to council of $9,369.82. Do we have a mover? Councillor Shoemaker, second to Councillor Duff. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 8.2. Recommendation is that the committee recommends to council that Sapana Regional Council does not accede to the request to waive interest charges, as the request is outside the approved financial hardship policy guidelines, and that council approve the special payment arrangements as detailed below and stated. I have a mover. Councillor Jones, seconder. Councillor Froloff. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 8.3. Committee recommends to council that council does not accede to the request to waive interest charges, as the request is outside the approved financial hardship policy guidelines, and the council approve the special payment arrangements as detailed below. We have a mover. Councillor Jones, seconder. Councillor Henson. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 8.4. Committee recommends to council that Sapana Regional Council does not accede to the request to waive interest charges, as the request is outside the approved financial hardship policy guidelines, and the council approve the special payment arrangements as detailed below. Mover, Councillor Jones, seconder, Councillor Froloff. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 8.5. Committee recommends to council that Sapana Regional Council agree to defer sale of land for overdue rates action and approve the payment arrangement for said property number as stated. Mover, Councillor Henson, second to Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 8.6. The committee recommends to council that Sapana Regional Council accede to the request to defer for 12 months the sale of land for overdue rates action and approve the special payment arrangement for the property number stated as listed. We have a mover. Councillor Jones, seconder. Councillor Henson. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. 8.7. Committee recommends to Council that South Bennett Regional Council does not accede to the request to waive interest charges as the request is outside the approved financial hardship policy guidelines, and the Council approve the special payment arrangement as detailed below. Mover, Councillor Froloff, seconder Councillor Jones. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 8.8. Now we have a variation to the recommendation here, Mr. Siasa. We'll need to note the reasons for such, but I'll hereby move that the committee recommends to Council that Council accede to the request and waive the legal costs of $633.49 and agree to write off interest charges of $29.70 and reinstate disallowed discount of $103.66 for property number 163300. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Shoemaker. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. Need a bit more time there, Linnell. You're good with that? Thank you. 8.9. Recommendation. So the committee recommends to Council. Council does not accede to the request to waive the interest charges on rates owing for assessment number stated. Immediately suspend sale of land for overdue rates action for assessment number stated. Accept the offer to enter into a payment arrangement for the assessment number stated for $6,950 per month commencing 1 July with interest still to be charged on overdue rates. This payment plan will be reviewed 31 December 2021 or at other times if Council is advised that the applicant's circumstances have changed significantly. This payment plan will expire upon payment in full of all outstanding rates and charges, and the General Manager Finance and Corporate be authorised to negotiate a simple payment arrangement should the applicant reject or vary the payment plan discussed above. Failure to maintain payments in accordance with the approved payment arrangement will result in the immediate commencement of sale of land for overdue rates action. Do we have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconder Councillor Duff. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 8.10. The committee recommends to Council that South Bennett Regional Council accede to the request to defer 12 months the sale of land for overdue rates action for property numbers stated. Have a mover? Councillor Jones, seconder Councillor Henson. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. 8.11. It's recommended that the committee recommend to Council, South Bennett Regional Council, defer sale of land for overdue rates action for a period of 6 months on the condition that the applicant seek financial advice in relation to the personal circumstances, and the applicant contacts Council by 30 December 2021 with a suitable payment arrangement that pays the outstanding balance and future rates balance off within 3 years, and interest will be waived for the first 6-month period. We have a mover, Councillor Jones, second, Councillor Duff. Those in favour? Carried unanimously. Thank you all. All items on the agenda have been attended to, and I'll now declare the meeting closed at 12:51 p.m. Thank you all.